All right, so let's jump right into it. So again, we're building the 26-man roster. We're going to go through the different salaries that are associated that lead up to that cap. We're also going to break down position by position. Our first section here, we're going to start with the 6 Yankees that we are definitely keeping for 2024. No trades, not even considering that. This is going to be the foundation of our team. Once we get into the 7th pick and on, building up all the way to the 26th, we can trade guys away, we can trade guys in, we can sign free agents, or we can retain players again. We'll talk a little bit about a lot of the players that we're keeping. We're going to keep it brief. We're going to try and fly through this episode as best as we can. We'll probably have to break it up into a few for our recording purposes, but we got a whole big sheet here, and we have our baseball reference and our fan graphs helping us along the way for some stats. But we'll talk you through some of those off-season conversation and see, how realistic are these things? There's a lot of chatter. There's a lot of agent-driven stuff. So we're going to get into how real we think all of that is. I'm going to start right away, and I have a pretty easy pick for number 1. I think you can go 2 obvious ways. I'm going to go as my number 1. I still view him as the best player on the Yankees, arguably the best player in baseball, especially if Shohei Ohtani is not pitching this year. I'm going to go Aaron Judge. Judge followed up his rate stats that were unreal from 2022, in which he played upwards of 155 games, but he only played 100 this year. He almost eclipsed 40 home runs. He was still one of the top home run hitters in the American League. Was the home run and RBI leader for the Yankees while just playing over 60% of their games. I'm not even sure if he reached 60%, but he played about 100 games. He is the best player on this team. He has a big contract, and we're starting with a hefty number at $40 million. That puts us at $49 million spent if we include the Aaron Hicks deal, which we're still on the hooks for. But what do you think of Judge overall, and Judge being that first pick?
He's our anchor. He's our best position player that we've had this decade, this generation. It's a clear-cut, easy option. And I think our second guy is as well. So we'll get into that in a second. But, you can't go wrong with Judge. That's our guy.
Now, the one thing here, I have to make a decision for the sake of our sheet on what position he's playing. And I think it's pretty comfortable to put him in at right field, but is there any chance that we see Judge at center field in the absence of Dominguez, in the absence of having any center fielder this year?
I'm going to go with no, because I have a few different moves that can easily supplement center field, and one of those is more of a long-term move. And then I see a really clear-cut depth piece as well, who can just fill in. There's actually 2 stopgaps that are very viable at this point. So I see that being no issue whatsoever. I don't think he's going to have to play much center field at all.
I hope so. So we'll start with our first right fielder, and take us into pick number 2, Jake.
That is an easy one. It's another guy that's a big earner. That would be Garrett Cole, Mr. Cy Young himself. Finally received his first Cy Young, and rightfully so. He was the best pitcher in the entire league this year, plain and simple, especially in the AL. He's been dominant for a while now, but this is the first time that he truly put it together on the ERA side. The complete games, just as durable as one can be. Strikeouts were still there. This is a perennial Hall of Famer, and it's clear as day that we still need him at the top of our rotation. He's our rock.
Garrett Cole was the best pitcher in baseball this year. And I listened to our episode from last year. You can go back and listen to it, where we spoke with our friend Jay Ray about where do we think Garrett Cole ranks in terms of baseball pitchers. And I think he is now definitively number 1. You look at the competitors, for a while, maybe Sandy Alcantara, Jason DeGrom, Jacob DeGrom, rather, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander falling off, and all of them are showing signs of injury. You look at Snell this year, didn't even put up a lot of innings. In terms of consistency, a guy who's going to throw 200 innings or at least upwards of 180 innings every year, sub 4 ERA, Garrett Cole has been doing that. And this year it was a sub 3 ERA in one of the toughest hitting divisions in Major League Baseball. I think he was the best pitcher this year. An easy number 2 pick for me. And another hefty contract, but I think he's been playing his way through it. He's made it very worth it for the Yankees, and I think his arm and his mechanics age very well. Obviously, I can eat my words in a few years, but Garrett Cole, I think, is an obvious number 2 pick.
Yeah.
that is going to be the easiest segment of this entire episode, because I'm already in a tough spot personally, because I think the Yankees are at a point where I think no one else is unmovable at the moment. Now, contracts might limit them into being movable, and I think that's where we'll get into what those contracts look like and the realities of it. I'm gonna go with not someone who I think is necessarily the third best player, but someone who I believe in for the value that the Yankees have him. I'm gonna pick Nestor Cortez. It is a bit
Good
of a
pick.
stretch pick, potentially, but Nestor Cortez is on the books for $3.9 million next year. That's his projected arbitration for 2024. The value that Nestor Cortez has given the Yankees is way above that. He had a bit of a tough year statistically and injury wise. And that creates cause for concern because um, he had put up a bunch of innings that he was not used to throwing. 2022, that was his all-star year, 158 innings, by far his greatest workload. But he was stellar throughout that whole season, and he was arguably a number two. And that's where we came into the season thinking that Nestor can put up a sub-3 ERA, right? He can be that number two. This year, in just 63 innings, he had just under a 5 ERA. This team needs value at pitching. You know, we can't have Cole, Rodon, and Yamamoto. That's a lot of money, and then just expect that they can cover all the five. I think Nestor Cortez needs to be in this rotation. He has shown the highest upside at the value that is available to the Yankees. So that's why I'm going Nestor Cortez, and you're buying low on him. He's been injured, but I think he has that upside to still be a solid 2 or 3 starter in MLB. He's shown it.
I don't hate it. I mean, it's just a matter of if he can come back and do it again. Hopefully that shoulder's not nagging him, because shoulder injuries can be quite a bit of an issue lingering in that sense. If he comes back fully healthy, then I think that he can easily be another number 3, number 4, just very reliable pitcher. There's a few different ways that you can definitely go about that decision. He's also in a bit of the trade talks right now. I don't know how official those are, but I could see a team easily wanting a low cost, high value pitcher like him. It'll be interesting to see if that plays out well.
Yeah, to me, I pick him because I think that there are some other options that would be potentially give us higher value in trades just for the age that they're at, and their projectability, whereas Nestor was never really thought of highly, but it kind of goes back and forth onto what teams want. Nestor has done a full all-star season, right? He's been a number 2 for a solid playoff team, right? Like Nestor was reliable last year. We relied on him down the stretch in the playoffs and everything, and he gave a lot. So it's really the comparison between some other players that we have, like Mike King, like Clark Schmidt, on what do teams want and where are they at in their rebuild for the player that we're looking for in a trade.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, take us into number 4.
Number 4, we're going to a quite important position on the field, and that would be catcher. I'm going to go with Austin Wells is going to stick around for a while. The Yankees have a plethora of talent at the catcher position currently on the 40-man roster. I want to say they have either 5 or 6 catchers right now. They really liked what they saw out of Austin Wells. So did I, this past season. He, in his shorter sample size, went off to like a little bit of a slow start early on, and then really found his stride in the last 2 weeks of the season. The power is clearly there. The swing is built for New York City, built for the stadium. He actually looked pretty good behind the plate too. His framing wasn't an issue. His arm wasn't an issue. And those are the 2 things that have been kind of scoffed at previously in a lot of the criticism against him early on. But he seems to be improving like very gradually at this point. So I think that he is going to, at minimum, be a platoon catcher for us and be that lefty bat that we need in the lineup.
Yeah, and that last part I think is really important. Austin Wells being a plus hitting catcher when you can't really rely on Trevino or Hickey to do that. Of recent, the Yankees can't afford to have any more holes in their lineup. I think there might be a position or two where you're really looking at like, a catcher level type of production. Wells can give you 100 games. He can potentially DH if you play the cards right. Stanton is going to be hurt at some point if he's in the lineup. Um, so I think he's someone that can supplement there. The lefty swing plays. He showed some really good contact tools during his stint on the major league roster. I think you definitely need to have him. If he's not your number one catcher, he's at least platooning. And you're putting him in advantageous situations for him to hit and succeed, preserving his body for a while and continuing his development as a defensive catcher, which I know the Yankees staff was pleasantly surprised with his defensive showing during his stint on the major league roster. So yeah, I love that pick. I might have gone the same way. But I'm gonna flip that back to a different line of thinking. And I mentioned there's no one who's unmovable, and there's contracts that go into how practical it is to move somebody. And I think the best case scenario, it was a weird year for this guy. But the best scenario is for the Yankees to keep him and to slot him in at first base. I'm going to go with Anthony Rizzo.
That was
An-
where my head was at.
yeah. Anthony Rizzo is on the books for 20 million next year. Part of that 2-year 40 million deal. Now Rizzo had a wild whirlwind of a season. Rizzo's April and May were as good as any player in baseball. He likely was on pace to be an all-star. He had one of the worst Junes, one of the worst months, frankly, in all of baseball for players that got run out there every day. That obviously came after his collision with Fernando Tatis during the Memorial Day series with the Padres. And that obviously derailed his whole season. He had a neck injury. His concussion was not spotted right away. He showed signs of concussions that was later diagnosed in mid to late July. And then the Yankees shut him down for a while. Rizzo has a big upside. And given that he's on a 1-year deal, he was hurt last year. I don't see anybody biting on him in a trade, even if you're really down on Rizzo. He's gonna go. He's gonna give great defense, even if his bat is not what it used to be. And that that injury is part of his natural aging regression. I think Rizzo has the potential to be still an all-star level player for you, or just be a solid 3, 4, 5 hitter in your lineup. He is a lefty. He can find the porch. With the shift changes, he's had a lot more contact than he did in 2022. I think Rizzo provides awesome upside, and whatever you would get for moving him would not at all be worth the risk and the potential hole of not having him in the lineup.
He's also currently working with Richard Skank, aka Teacher Man, aka Aaron Judge's personal hitting coach, which I think is pretty significant for him and just making sure that he's mechanically clean, especially coming back from the concussion protocol. I don't think it's a matter of whether or not his swing is going to be there. I just think it's a matter of whether or not the lingering effects of the concussion are an issue or not. This is a guy who's best friends with Judge. It just makes all the sense in the world to keep him there. He's only there for 1 more year anyway. There's very minimal downside on keeping this dude around, especially as your starting first baseman, especially if he can get back to the form of where he was before the concussions, because he was a top 3 first baseman in the league the first half of the season.
Yeah, for sure. And I said that he's on the books for 20 million. I think the Yankees actually had an interesting contract. I think he was paid 23 million last year. He's only on the books for 17 this year. So that's a pleasant surprise for his 2024. His AAV was 20 million a year, but they front loaded the contract, and I think that works out even better on the Yankees end.
Yeah.
So take us into pick number 6, the last definite returner for the Yankees.
Like you said, all of these next picks are going to be tough, and this one is equally as tough for me, but it's based off of the money that he's getting. He's going to be on this team, and it was only his first year with the Yankees last season. That's going to be Carlos Rodon. They're paying him big bucks to be at least a number 2, and he did come back from having a chronic back injury that he was diagnosed with for the first time. You have to imagine that at this point he's understood what it takes to keep that under control. He knows how to maintain his body at this point. You have to go in with the assumption that he is going to do everything it takes to get back to form. I don't see any world where he's getting moved with that big of a contract. So it's up to him ultimately, and also the Yankees staff, to work diligently to make sure that he's a serviceable 2 or 3 starter at this point. He's going nowhere.
Yeah, I'm with you. And we can look into Rodon's stats, and honestly, I think we talked ad nauseum about them. This year, they were not good. I think it's a clear and hopeful outlier. Um, his K per nine was down, his walk rate was up, his homers per nine was way up. Every single stat you can think of, it was just a stinker for him this year. He could not stay on the field. He had barely a sub 7 ERA. But I'm with you. I think we were excited about Rodon signing, and that's again, there's high upside there. And I think there's no one you're gonna get uh if you get rid of him. So like you would be selling way low. I think Rodon still has potential to be an ace. He's proven it. He's only 31. He was not able to get really a decent run of form without injuries this year. And he's on the books for $27.8 million through 2028. You know, this is a different conversation in a year or two if Rodon does not return to form. But I want to give him the benefit of the doubt of a really weird, a really tough year, in which he just gets back to full health. There's not pressure put on him, to get back, which I know at times this year there was a lot of pressure put on Rodon to help save the Yankees, and he could not, and he would not, frankly. Yeah, and again, for the talent that Rodon has shown to be in previous years. I mean, he was a consistent high Cy Young finisher the 3 previous years to being with the Yankees. I think you have to run it out, and you kind of have to hope at that money we're not getting anything valuable back. If you trade him, I think you hope, and I think there's still a solid chance of him being the great number 2 that the Yankees need.
Yeah, we gotta hope that Rodon is in a good place going into the season. He has a full regimen ready to, roll out with Matt Blake, and he's going to get cooking.